Hi there, my name's Simon Drew, and welcome to the Practical Stoic Podcast, where I give you practical Stoic advice for modern times. You can support the show by going to patreon.com/Simon Drew. I also do one-on-one mindset coaching, and you can book in your first free consultation by going to risetothegoodlife.com/coaching. On Facebook, you can join my group, the Practical Stoic Mastermind. But for now, enjoy this episode. Hi there, my name's Simon Drew, and welcome to the Practical Stoic Podcast. In this episode, I'll be going through what I believe to be the core values of Stoicism. As with any philosophy, there are a few themes that come up often in the teachings, and many of you will know that there are 4 cardinal virtues of Stoicism, which are wisdom, justice, courage, and moderation. And I know that this is a helpful breakdown of Stoicism, but I would like to give a wider view. So I hope that this will help you to better understand the philosophy of Stoicism so that you can begin to implement some of the strategies and principles into your life. So let's get straight into it. The first core value of Stoicism is the idea that virtue is the ultimate goal of life. And so if virtue is the ultimate goal, then we should be constantly minding our actions, always trying to make the best possible decision. While a philosophy like Epicureanism may teach that happiness comes from indulgence in pleasure, Stoicism teaches that true and lasting joy can only be found while we are living a virtuous life. We should make sure that we are living our lives in the best possible way, refraining from actions or habits that are clearly not right. The Stoics talk about the sage, being a person who is able to make the best and most virtuous decisions all the time. But how can we know if something is right or wrong? We are not sages, and so obviously we'll need to have some way of deciding which paths are the best to take. Well, that's where the second core value of Stoicism comes in, which says that we should be in a constant search for knowledge and wisdom. The Stoics taught that when people make poor decisions, it is because of their ignorance about what is right and wrong. So what is the antidote? Education. Life has many mysteries, and through Stoicism we are encouraged to learn as much about those mysteries as possible. We are taught that you are never too old or too young to be studying philosophy, and that time is never ill spent if it is spent in the pursuit of knowledge. We should be curious about life, nature, the arts, literature, history, and most of all, philosophy. By studying these things, we are able to become better decision makers and more well-rounded people. Moving on, the third core belief of Stoicism is that excessive passions or emotional reactions should be limited. Passion and emotion is neither good nor bad, but if it interferes with your quest for virtue, then it is bad. We cannot necessarily control the emotions that we feel in the moment. However, we can control how we react based on those emotions. As human beings, we have rationality, which means that we have power to choose our actions. Spare-of-the-moment reactions should be avoided, because they are often irrational and based on whims, not reality. And this is where you'll get much of the colloquial use of the term Stoic, often used to describe someone who avoids emotional extremes, is calm under pressure, and is generally unresponsive to pain or torment. This is an interesting portrayal of a Stoic, however it is not 100% accurate. See, Stoic philosophers actually encourage people to feel the emotions and to experience happiness, joy, grief, love, sadness, and excitement. But at the same time, they remind us to put these emotions in their proper place. For example, if you're extremely excited about buying a brand new car, you have one of 2 options. You could give in to that excitement and make the decision to buy the car, or you could let your education and rationality step in and remind you that the excitement that you feel now will go away in a matter of weeks, and that your happiness should not be based on objects that can easily be lost. And while we're talking about emotions, the Stoics also recognized that there were some emotions that were so deeply rooted in humanity that they simply had to be felt. For example, Seneca said that it would be inhumane for a person to not feel grief after the passing of a loved one, and he then taught that the grief would only be bad if it was felt in excess to the point where it completely consumed that person's life. So as you can see, this is where the moderation part of Stoicism comes into play. The fourth core value of Stoicism has to do with luck and chance, which happen to everybody. Sometimes we have good luck, and sometimes we have bad luck. Crappy things happen in life, and the Stoics teach that you can't change what is happening to you right now, but you can do your best to prepare to have a better future. So we should learn to accept the hand that life has dealt us, all the while doing our best to make the situation better. One strategy that the Stoics offer which can help us to have a better future is to rehearse calamity. We should become well acquainted with being uncomfortable, whether that's through hard physical exercise, living well below our means, or setting aside a certain number of days per year to eat only the simplest foods and buy only the bare necessities. When we do this, then we are able to see how we can still be virtuous and happy when we're going through tough situations. Your behavior should not be based on how much money you have or how easy your life is. Because if that's the case, then as soon as a recession comes along and you lose your job, then you're going to lose your mind. No, our decisions should be deeply rooted in philosophy, so that we can make virtuous decisions and live a good life no matter what life throws our way. Next, the fifth core value of Stoicism is the idea that our lives should be perfectly aligned with the nature of the world. If we order our lives according to the divine laws of nature, then nothing can harm or surprise us because everything that happens must happen by necessity. For example, there are good people in the world, but there must also, according to nature's laws, be bad people. So don't be surprised when someone is bad. Some days are sunny, but according to the laws of nature, there will also be days that are cloudy and rainy. So don't get upset when this happens, because you know it will happen. If good fortune comes your way, great. But if bad fortune comes your way, then we must accept it because all that we can control is our interpretation of those events and our subsequent reactions. We cannot control the weather, but we can control how we view and respond to a rainy day. And speaking of our interpretations of what happens, the next core value of Stoicism is the idea that everything you experience is based on your own opinions and personal biases. For example, Epictetus taught, and rightfully so, that humans have a tendency to give meaning to events where there is no meaning. Something happens and we immediately assume that it's the end of the world. This clearly is the source of so much of our anxiety as a human race. For example, maybe somebody cuts you off in traffic and you immediately decide that that person is a jerk and that the world is against you today. But if Epictetus were alive today, then he might suggest that maybe that person had a perfectly good reason to cut you off. He would suggest that if you change your opinion about the event, then you can also change the emotions that come as a result of that event. You can go from anger and road rage to understanding and peace just by changing your interpretation of the event. Epictetus taught that we should try to look for the positives in any situation, and that we should look for the opportunities to learn and grow through everything that happens to us. By changing the way that you see the world, and by changing your opinions about what happens, you can completely change the course of your life. And moving on, the next core value of Stoicism is knowing what you can control and what you can't. William B. Irvine, a professor of philosophy and self-proclaimed Stoic, calls this the trichotomy of control, meaning that there are three possible options. First, there are things that we absolutely cannot control, such as the weather. Then there are things that we can only partially control, like the way that people treat us. And third, there are things that we can fully control, such as the time and effort that we put into a certain project. When we become skilled at knowing what we can control and what we cannot, then we are able to double our efforts towards those things that we can control and stop worrying about the things that we can't. This is extremely helpful when it comes to our worries and anxieties about the future, because it allows us to stop focusing on what will happen tomorrow and instead to start focusing on what we can do today that will create the outcome that we want tomorrow. Fearing the future is pointless because we cannot control the events that will come our way, but we can control our own actions today. The trichotomy of control is also very helpful when it comes to goal setting. When we set a goal, we should be looking to set internal goals as opposed to external goals. Internal meaning we have the power to control the outcome of our goal, and external meaning we have limited or no power over the outcome. In his book, A Guide to the Good Life, Irvine gives the example of a tennis player who sets the internal goal to always play his best, because this is something that he can control, and if he achieves this, then he has the highest chance of winning his matches. He should not, however, set the goal to always win the match, because this is something that is only partially in his control, seeing as no matter what he does, the other player may be better. And so if he loses, he'll be extremely disappointed, as opposed to feeling great about the effort that he gave. The next core value of Stoicism is gratitude. Stoics teach that if you want to have a happy life, then you should learn to love what you have instead of being in a constant search for something new. If you can learn to fully appreciate all of the beauty in your life now, then you will not be affected by that new car that's on the market or that new home that you want. You'll think rationally, and you'll recognize that even though it's nice to acquire new things, they do not and will never bring long-term happiness. See, it's not about not wanting to progress, but it's about finding a pure and full gratitude for all of the beauty that you experience in your life. This is a worthy skill to develop, in my view. Moving on, the ninth core value of Stoicism is the idea that philosophy should be both accessible and useful to the general public. Anyone, if he or she desires, should be able to study philosophy and derive from it some goodness that will allow them to live a better life. Stoicism should be practical, and the Stoics sometimes even liken the philosopher to a doctor, suggesting that people should, after a visit with a philosopher or teacher, always take away with them some piece of useful information that will heal or strengthen their mind. Philosophy should not be concerned with pretentious semantics or clever sentences, but instead it should set its aim at bettering humanity. The next core teaching of Stoicism has to do with why we are here. Existentialists may teach that life has no meaning or purpose, but Stoicism says that life's purpose is whatever you make it, and once you've decided on that purpose, you should live it to the best of your abilities, as long as that purpose is virtuous. Nature did not intend for us to be lazy or slothful. Marcus Aurelius gave an analogy of the hive of bees, where every bee simply fulfills his purpose. He does not decide that one day he'll work and the other he'll rest. No, he gets to the job at hand, no matter what. And so, if a creature as simple as a bee can do its duties so well, then why, as rational human beings, should we be any different? If you decide that your purpose in life is to be the best father that you can be, then be the best father you can be. If you feel as though you were born to make the best solid timber dining tables, then do your very best to make those tables. If your purpose is sport, then be the best athlete that you can be. Whatever you do, do your best. Then at the end of your life, no matter what happened or how it all turned out, you can say that you lived your purpose and gave it everything. The next core value of Stoic philosophy is the idea that we must live in harmony with other people, because we are all a part of one larger community of humanity. This is often referred to as Stoic cosmopolitanism. We were all put on this earth in the same way, and we all share the same blood, so we should all take care of each other to the best of our abilities. All of the main Stoic philosophers have at times written about our need to be in complete harmony with the rest of humankind. Marcus Aurelius wrote about the fact that we are all born and we must all die, so how are any of us really different? Seneca expressed his disdain towards the cruel treatment of slaves and the horrible entertainment of the Colosseums where people were being thrown to lions. Epictetus was a slave himself and expressed no negative feelings towards his previous masters. Musonius Rufus expressed his view that it should not only be men who study philosophy, but women also, seeing as all people, regardless of gender, can benefit from philosophy. Stoics focus on what makes us all the same, not what makes us different. Moving on, the 12th core value of Stoicism is the virtue of courage. It takes courage to be different and to leave the herd. It takes courage to make the right decision when others are not. It takes courage to live a good life, one of dedication, discipline, and excellence. The ancient Stoics held views that at the time were quite contrary to popular belief, and it took courage for them to say what they said. Through Stoicism, we are encouraged to not follow the crowd, but instead to separate ourselves and to live a more fully examined life. And finally, the last core value of Stoicism, at least on my list, is the idea that we cannot live well unless we first come to terms with the fact that someday, maybe tomorrow, we will die. Stoics believe that death should not be feared, but rather it should be constantly on our minds as a source of inspiration. In fact, they would say memento mori, which means remember you must die. Remembering that one day we will all die should serve as a great source of inspiration, a reminder that we should be filling our days with as much life as possible. You should love more, live more, make better choices, and become the person who you want to be, because tomorrow it could all be gone. And this doesn't only apply to death. For example, I'll come back to the fact that Stoics teach that we should rehearse poverty, because the truth of life is that nothing lasts forever. And so what you have today may be gone tomorrow. If you are always aware that tomorrow you may lose everything, then it won't be a crippling surprise to you if or when you do lose it all. By constantly pondering the frailty of life, Stoics are better able to live in the moment, because they understand that every day in the light is an incredible blessing, one that should be cherished like a flower that will soon wilt. So that's everything. These are what I believe to be the core values of Stoicism. As I said at the start of the episode, I'm always trying to learn more and become more acquainted with this philosophy. And so I may be right in some areas and kind of wrong in the others. But at this stage in my own personal education, this is the best list that I can put together, and I hope that it's helpful. I look forward to providing you with a lot of value in future episodes, and I'll talk to you next time. But until then, I hope that this episode has helped you on your rise to the good life. Ciao. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Practical Stoic Podcast. I hope it's been valuable for you. And if you'd like to support the show, then you can go to patreon.com/Simon Drew. If you'd like to try mindset coaching with me, then you can book your first free consultation by going to risetothegoodlife.com/coaching. To join the community, just go to Facebook and search for the Practical Stoic Mastermind. The links to all of these places are included in the show notes, but for now, this is Simon Drew signing out.